Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The feckless Republicans have done it again. They promised for 7 years that they would replace Obamacare. People are suffering because of the high premiums. Those exchanges are going bankrupt. All across the country, there is the litter of the damage being done by Obamacare. If a business has 50 or more employees, it's subject to different kind of penalties and so forth. So it's so easy for a business to keep its employment low. This has been a job killer. You can't imagine all the damage that's been done. So the Republicans ran on the premise that they were going to repeal and replace Obamacare. But they lied. They lied to the American people. You know, the president lied. He said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. He lied. So the Republicans did the same thing. And Senator Susan Collins of Maine says, okay, I'm going to oppose it so they don't have 50 votes to carry it. And they go down in flames again. Wendy, I don't understand it. This thing is an abomination.
There's a lot of people saying that very same thing, Pat, and that defeat comes after the White House and GOP leaders in Congress worked hard to get enough votes to pass it. Charlene Aaron has the story.
Republican lawmakers revised the bill several times in an attempt to win over Republican holdouts, while its sponsors had defended the measure.
My state had a 31% premium increase under Obamacare. If we don't repeal and replace, it's a disaster for South Carolina.
With the Republicans' narrow 52-48 majority, it only took 3 GOP votes to kill the bill. Monday, President Trump had seemed cautious about the bill's success.
We have 52 votes, so we can't lose any votes. I mean, practically. So we're going to lose 2 or 3 votes, and that's the end of that.
2 Republican senators, Rand Paul and John McCain, had already opposed the bill.
There are some things that are good in the bill. My concern still is that we have a $700 billion deficit, and I think that this bill basically immortalizes the spending. The spending will go on and on and on, and I don't think anybody's taking account for what that does to the deficit.
Then Monday, the Congressional Budget Office released a preliminary review of the Republican bill, showing that it would save money over the next 10 years, $133 billion. But people could lose insurance, although many of those could simply be dropping out of the system, not actually losing insurance. The CBO wasn't clear on exact estimates of how many Americans would be uninsured. And then Maine Senator Susan Collins came out against the bill.
It would have a negative impact on millions of Americans who are now insured. So it was that final piece of the puzzle that I had been waiting to confirm.
And Collins says the legislation would likely drive up insurance premiums for millions of Americans and weaken protections. Shortly after Collins's announcement, Senator Ted Cruz tweeted, "We cannot give up on Obamacare repeal. We must keep working. We can get to yes." But with 3 Republican senators standing against the bill and unlikely to change, it is essentially dead on arrival. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
I tell you, doesn't that make you sick? You know, the dirty little secret. I mentioned it yesterday, I'll say it again. Under Obama, there was a special carve-out for the members of Congress, for their staffs, and for certain selected people in the government. How did they do it? Well, they said that the House and the Senate are small businesses. Can you believe that? Small businesses. They deal with billions and billions of dollars, but yet they said that they're small businesses. Why does that matter? Well, in a small business, it is permissible under the law to subsidize the health premiums of your employees. If it's a bigger business, you can't do it, but it's if you have less than 50 employees, if you're a small business. Now, how do they subsidize it? The federal government, get this, the federal government pays roughly 73% of the premiums of the congressmen, the congressional staff, the people in the government. So the terrible increases in premiums that are taking place across the country are not affecting them. Now, if the president wants to put the screws to them, he ought to revoke that small business stuff, because it was merely an executive order that put it in place, and say they're not small businesses, they're big businesses, and they've got to pay, and they cannot subsidize the health care of their employees. That's what they do. They carve out something nasty, and they take the good stuff and they keep it for themselves, and they stick the rest of us. But the premiums are going up in certain states as much as 200%. The exchanges are going bankrupt all across the country. It is chaos. What is Susan Collins and what are these other senators talking about? People are going to lose their health care. They're not going to lose anything. The new bill would put something in place to substitute for this failed system. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's politics, and I don't understand it. But, you know, McCain said, well, we want to have regular order. How much regular order was it when the Democrats jammed that law through without one single Republican vote and jammed it through, what was it, on New Year's Eve or something? It was some crazy thing. Harry Reid jammed it through. There wasn't any debate. There wasn't any debate. They jammed this monstrosity through, and now he says, well, we've got to have regular order. Baloney. I'm mad.
How do you really feel?
I am disgusted. I really am disgusted. And I think a lot of people are disgusted, and they're going to vote against these clowns because they were not doing what they pledged to do. McCain ran on the thing that he was a man who was going to take down Obamacare.
Yeah.
And
well,
having run on that platform, he lies when he gets the vote. Well, in other news, the United States is making it clear it has not gone to war against North Korea. John Jessup has that.
That's right, Pat. North Korea's foreign minister considers a tweet by President Trump a declaration of war. National security correspondent Eric Rosales reports on the war of words and what could happen if the North carries out its threat to test a hydrogen bomb over the Pacific Ocean.
North Korea's top diplomat accused President Trump of openly declaring war on his country. The foreign minister of North Korea claims in this tweet, which states Little Rocket Man won't be around much longer, gives the rogue nation every right to strike back.
Since the U.S. has made a declaration of war, we will have every right to make countermeasures, including the right to shoot down the United States strategic bombers, even if they do not come into our airspace.
The State Department rapidly pushed back, telling CBN News the United States has not declared war on North Korea. We continue to seek a peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Pentagon officials also spoke out, defending the right to conduct flyovers, including this past weekend's show of military strength, as B-1 bombers and F-15 fighter jets flew along the North Korean coast, farther north than any American aircraft in decades.
It is our hope that they stop these provocations and their pursuit of their nuclear program. Again,
if they do a nuclear test?
Well, again, that goes back to, our job is to make sure that the president has those options. We've got a deep arsenal of options to provide the president to make a decision if that were to occur.
If North Korea follows through with a hydrogen bomb nuclear test over the Pacific, radioactive fallout could be catastrophic. Thus far, all 6 North Korean nuclear tests have been underground, containing the radioactivity. But the threatening H-bomb test would destroy or contaminate marine life. Plus, the wind would send a radioactive cloud over populated areas.
We are approaching a Cuban Missile Crisis-like situation. Okay, the threat of nuclear war is not necessarily high, but it's real.
Daryl Kimball, executive director of the Washington, D.C.-based think tank Arms Control Association, believes the U.S. needs to consider how involving other countries might help cut the escalation cycle.
The Chinese, likewise, could play a role in brokering a conversation. The Security Council could meet and bring the North Koreans into the conversation in a closed-door setting. There are things that can be done to establish a dialogue that reduces the risks. And now's the time to do that.
It's unclear if North Korea even has the capability to perform a hydrogen bomb test. However, it's safe to assume the North Korean dictator means what he says and will act on it. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
And Pat, to Eric's point, every test that Kim's threatened to do, he's actually carried out.
Well, as one congressman said so cogently, this is a country run by a crime family. This is nothing but a crime family, and all they care about is keeping their own power. Didn't he take anti-aircraft guns and shoot people? I mean, didn't he do that? Didn't he have one of his own relatives murdered? This young man doesn't care as long as he keeps power. But the idea of a atmospheric test of a hydrogen bomb is unthinkable because of the fallout and the radiation that comes from it. This is unthinkable, but he might well do it. Now, I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but I, for one, am sick to death of hearing football players who get paid $300,000, $400,000, $20 million, $25 million, $30 million, protesting about injustice. I'm sick of hearing about it. What injustice? The injustice is that they would get paid so much money when so many people suffer in this world. But all this business about insulting the flag, insulting the national anthem, I think the president is on the side of the angels on this one. And the NFL, you know, they used to say that the name of NFL meant not for long. The players don't have but about a 6-year life playing professional football. But it's my feeling that the NFL is doing irreparable harm to its image. People who used to enjoy football think that, okay, if it's politicized, all I'm looking is a political statement. I've got to watch those hulks, overpaid hulks, stand up and then kneel down and then insult the flag or stay in their locker room and they won't come out for the national anthem. I mean, this is outrageous. Well, Dallas owner Jerry Jones has his own way of playing it both sides of the field. He's pretty clever at this. Here's the story.
That's right, Pat. Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones joined his team in kneeling before the national anthem during Monday night's game. Jones, the Cowboys coaching staff, and front office executives locked arms while kneeling on the field. Then they stood during the national anthem. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford tells CBN News although free speech and the right to protest are central to America's freedom, he also believes there's a bit of a double standard.
I do have an issue that I have to tell you. For whatever reason in America, if individual players kneel in protest at a football game, that's seen as free speech. We do have high school coaches that have kneeled in silent prayer and they've been fired. Now, the First Amendment's the First Amendment. It goes start to finish. We can't say to one football coach, you're fired if you kneel in silent prayer at the end of the game, but to a player, if you kneel in protest at a game, you're celebrated.
Lankford adds that if America is going to honor free speech and the free exercise of religion, it should be done for everyone. Well, the Kurdish people took a step towards statehood Monday by voting for independence. Official results won't be released for another day or two, but observers expect a yes vote of 75% or more. As Chris Mitchell reports from Erbil, the question now is what happens next in the Middle East.
After the vote, Kurds took to the streets to celebrate their claim to a country of their own. Hours earlier, they took to the polls. Many came in Kurdish dress and made it a family affair.
These Kurds are exercising their right to vote for independence for the first time. For many, it's one more step in a long history toward a free and independent Kurdistan.
Even though 14-year-old Soma couldn't vote, she came with her family and expressed the hopes of the Kurdish people.
If you're Kurd, this is a special day for you because you're going to be free from now on. If you like, I hope everybody votes for that because it's really special for me.
This is a people achieving a dream they've had for 100 years.
Former Ambassador Peter Galbraith compares the Kurds of today to Americans more than 200 years ago.
They're not asking anything from the Americans except for the Americans to accept that the Kurds have the same right that Americans had in 1776. Only the Kurdish complaints against Iraq are much bigger than the American complaints against George III.
The U.S. opposed the referendum. Retired General Jay Garner says this State Department position is based on the one Iraq policy, which would keep Kurdistan under the influence of the Iranian-backed government in Baghdad.
If we cause the Kurds to stay in the Republic of Iraq, one, we give them to the Iranians. Two, we complete the Shia arc that goes from Tehran through Iran, through Syria, into Lebanon, and wreaks terror on Israel.
Galbraith says this policy puts the U.S. on the wrong side.
To insist on the unity of Iraq under a government in Baghdad that is Iran's closest ally in the world, that created a militia which is commanded by General Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and which is on Kurdistan's borders. And instead of siding with the Kurds, the Trump administration siding with Iran and General Qasem Soleimani.
Galbraith and Garner say the Kurds could stop Iran's reach and be a haven for Christians.
The place that has been protecting Iraq's Christians, the Christians of the Middle East, is Kurdistan.
The Kurds face hostile neighbors opposed to their independence. But that doesn't stop Kurds like Soma dreaming of a free Kurdistan.
It would be a really happy place for Kurd people to be like free. It would be special.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Erbil, Kurdistan.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, how do you think this will shake things out in the Middle East?
Let's face it, Iraq is a creature of the foreign powers who cobbled together something that they called Iraq. That was done probably by the Brits, and so what? It used to be called Mesopotamia. It had all kinds of things. So there is no Iraq as such in history, and they have no more claim over the Kurds than anybody else. Now, these Kurds, the name, you don't understand what wonderful people they are. The Kurds are generous, they're giving, they're loving, and they have a tremendous society built up in that little region where they're in charge. They ought to have their own nation. Now, they also have Kirkuk. They've got some oil up there, and I'm sure the Iraqi central government doesn't want to give it up, and they have an arrangement where they have some money going back and forth. But at the same time, I think the Kurds should be allowed to produce their oil and market it and take the money. But there is a Kurdish enclave in Syria. Syria is broken apart. Syria as a nation really ceases to exist. And so those Kurds deserve independence. Now, the sticking point would come with Turkey. There's a Kurdish enclave in Turkey, and the Turks are just terrified that those Kurds will rise up and somehow overthrow Erdogan. But I think what's got to be done is allow the Kurds, and the United States absolutely should get on the side of the Kurds. The Kurds have fought with us. The Peshmerga has fought with us. The other Kurdish militias have fought with us. They are the major fighting force on our side in the Middle East. And we need to stand with them and let them have their independence. I mean, that is something that absolutely should be done. And it's smart policy, long range, it's smart policy. And if the Turks don't like it, tough luck.